Every talk is of great importance because we're talking about things that are important to you as a human being who has come into this world and have been buffeted around by it and don't know what to do. Since every talk is authorized by the higher facts of life, every talk is the most important thing you can do during your week. Attend it, hear it, absorb it, and above all, experiment with it so that you are experimenting with what is higher with your present capacity to understand it, so that that capacity is raised by truth itself. Now, one of the major problems of your life is, and I'm going to say this in several different ways, one of the great problems of your existence here on earth is the problem of repetitious events, of getting up in the morning and having nothing really exciting to look forward to, but sensing that you are going to repeat on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday what happened to you in all your previous years. Don't you understand, to put it right to the point, how utterly dull and pointless your day is? If you don't understand that, then I will tell you that it is. You have nothing truly exciting. You don't know what it means to have authentic excitement. The kind of excitement I referred to when I said we're connected with higher things if we receive them. Most human beings, they get up in the morning and they go into another day of irritation, of their mind raging. And have I or have I not described you? But there's one key word, and I want to emphasize at the start tonight, which is the sense of boredom, of pointlessness, which arouses false hope of rescue in you. And so the world chases around, going after the excitements, never wanting, now listen, this is important, never wanting to see that what you chase, you never catch. See, there's something in you that yearns for something that you don't know what. You don't know what it is? Of course you don't know what it is. If you knew what it was, you'd have it. And so we settle for repetitious behavior, a feeling of hopelessness, and watch how you fake it. Watch how you pretend inwardly to yourself or outwardly, and I see you pretending outwardly all the time. Pretending that you are on the way. How horrible to be so hypnotized by your own mind and saying, I am now on my way to something better, therefore I have a reason to be happy. You have no reason at all. I wish you would get the habit of seeing through yourself. And there are ways to do this, which we'll cover a little later. Don't you know that as you are now, that you are a hopeless human being? You are. What do you have to be happy about? You have nothing. I'm going to tell you what you can be happy about a little later. But we have to establish things. We have to go take the first steps first for you to see that your life is nothing. It's absolutely nothing. You're desperate. You live by the TV show and identify with the hero or heroine or the excitement on it. And for a little bit, everything looks all right because you've temporarily lost yourself in the flickering there on the screen, which you know will have to come over, and you'll have to go to bed at night. And now you're getting close to yourself when you go to bed, don't you? And you can't go to sleep, and you dream bad dreams. And a lot of you listening to me, there's a part of you that sort of wishes that this oblivion of what little sleep you get, that this oblivion could continue. Have you ever faced that, by the way? Huh? Do you know what that's called? Shall I tell you what it's called? Maybe it'll shock you a little bit awake. It's called mental suicide. The yearning to black out and not have to face tomorrow morning. Oh, I wish I could tell you what you were missing. I wish I could tell you where you were doing the wrong thing with your opportunity here in this world. Well, you don't know what real excitement is, so we'll go into that. But I want you to know right now that what you're doing is engaging in unseen self-betrayal. Because it is possible for you to sleep soundly at night. It is possible for you to get up and go to work or take care of the children or whatever you do. It is possible for you to do that. And every morning is exciting in a way you can't describe to anyone and don't have to describe to anyone. And don't have to describe to yourself. It's so exciting because you know that today you will get an authentic excitement of rising one more inch above yourself than you were the day before. That is what authentic excitement is, and we'll come back to why you don't have that. Self-betrayal. Think of a general in the army, and he's out fighting a series of battles which he loses. He gets defeated and he gets wounded and all his troops are pushed back. And it's a disaster for him. And he's been relying on a captain, one of his officers, a captain, to bring him information about the enemy army. And he can't understand with all this information that his own captain has been giving him why he's defeated and why he's so personally wounded. You're the general. And you are being betrayed just as the general was by his own captain. You see, he didn't know that. The man had been with him for 20 years and he was in the pay of the enemy. And he didn't know. No wonder he got defeated. You seated here tonight are taking your present ways of behaving, of solving problems, of escaping. You are taking that as authentic intelligence information. Look, can't you put two and two together? Look. You are defeated. That is a fact. Now, don't deny it. Don't lie. You are defeated. You get mad all the time. You have to protect yourself. You're sarcastic. You're bitter. You're hard. You're practically psychopathic, some of you. That is your condition. Now, if there is a God, which there is, and you have not made connection with God, truth, then there must be a reason for it. Face the fact that you're defeated, and there's a God who is not defeated. He is victorious. You are defeated, therefore you're not connected with reality, therefore there is betrayal somewhere. And you'd better realize right now that that betrayal is something that you have consented to. You have consented. My old friends, my old thoughts, been with me all these years. They're so familiar to me. I can call on them anytime to help me out and find out about the enemy. Well, now look how utterly reasonable, how utterly logical it is. You have been trusting your present nature to escape boredom, for one thing. You've been counting on it to get you out of the trap, and it never gets you out of it. I don't understand why you just don't stop sometime and take a look at what and who you have been trusting in order to find out where treachery has been performed on you and you haven't seen it as yet. All betrayal, all treachery is self-treachery and self-betrayal. No one, I know, listen, I know how you think about it, but no one has ever betrayed you. You, in your ignorance, have been betrayed by treacherous people. Of course, they're treacherous to do it to you. But because you have chosen your old friends, that treacherous captain, you have chosen that instead of reality, you, of course, are finally responsible. Now, try to get out of that. Look at what pure logic does. It gets us right in a trap where, well, we must be, so that we have nothing more to say, nothing more to argue about, nothing more to do. Oh, but you're eager to do something. Of course you are. You're eager to call on the captain and say, get me out of this. We're getting defeated by the enemy. I don't have much money. Help me to get more money. People don't like me. Help me to be personable. Help me to be personable and to be attractive. Did it ever occur to you, also in connection with this, that what you were asking for is all wrong? Take the analogy of the battlefield again. Why do you want to win the battle of life? What you call the battle of life, why do you want to be the president of the hotel chain? Why do you want to be the vice president of the company? That's a very small part of it, because I know where you live most of the time. You live inwardly, wishing for internal rewards so that you can go into daydreams, imaginations, and let them, what you call, fulfill you, which, and I give you the term for that, it's called madness. It's called insanity to permit imagination to take over your internal life. That's the captain, imagination. To take over your internal life and let it give you directions on what you should do. For example, the captain brings back information. If you want to win the battle, you should put on a phony pretense and make people think that you're nice. And when you do that, of course, you lose the battle, because then you're apart from reality. You see, you have to understand way down deep inside that there is nothing whatever for you to ever again fight for. There is nothing. Now, therefore, why don't you stop right now, effective immediately, trying to fight anything or anyone, outward or inward? Why don't you stop battling and just see what happens as a result of that? You know why you won't? You're afraid of the results of that. You're afraid that you're going to disappear. You're afraid that you won't be able to consult with yourself whenever a problem comes up. You won't be able to consult with yourself because you want to consult with yourself and get the false, treacherous answers so that the whole game can continue to go on. Now, I'm going to tell you now something that you mustn't please miss what you're going to hear next. And I will tell you well in advance that you are going to miss it. Now, why would I say that? I say don't miss it, but you are going to miss it because I want you to become alert to what I'm going to talk about. And I want you to see that during the break, you couldn't remember and employ what I told you. Tomorrow, you won't be able to do it. And I say this so to make you conscious that you can't do something that you now think you can do. And also, so that you'll value this extremely simple method explanation that you're going to get. So that you'll never in your life be able to forget it. So that you'll be able, for every day from now on, right in the middle of working around the home, you'll be able to catch what I'm going to tell you about in a minute. Catch it until you catch it 10,000 times at least. And after 10,000 times, the first time after the 10,000, you'll clap your hand to your forehead and you'll say, I finally got it after all that time. And I'm so grateful that I followed instructions exactly and stuck with it. Listen to this. You are insecure. You are lost. You are apart from reality. You're rambling through life as a wreck. You're doing this simply because you have filled your life with one very, very injurious thing. And it is this. All day and night long, you talk about yourself. Well, don't you? If you're not talking with your tongue, you're talking with your mind. You're always talking by yourself. You watch the conversations you have during the break. See if you can see how many times you can see that everything you say and do and feel emanates from you. From what you call you. And that's another story, isn't it? Which perhaps we can cover. But for now, someone says something to you and you immediately go into you and get the answer out of your conditioned self, your most prized self, your own mind, your self-protective self, your self-glorified self, your vanity self, your stubborn self. Always, everything you say and do comes from you. All right, so far? When you're all alone, the very same thing happens. Your mind is going and plotting. Watch it and see the thousands of self-references that can go through you in just one day, in which you are the center of everything in your day. Absolutely. You see politics on television. You go down and see someone buying a house and you refer yourself to them buying that house. Everything is connected to you. Now, I'll give you a few descriptions of this state, and you'll understand why you're so bored, why nothing is new and exciting to you. It's called being an egotist. It's called being an average human being. It's called being completely asleep spiritually. It's called loving yourself more than you love truth, which you don't know, because when you love yourself, you can't love truth. It's one or the other. It's called being so lazy that you won't pause long enough to see that you were always speaking from yourself, and on and on. And it's the cause of every problem, personal and community. It's the cause of alcoholism. It's because of everything in this mad world. People bragging about the damage that they do. People actually brag. I saw it on television last night, boasting about the damage they have done to other people. Well, you can watch it any night on television or in contact with people. Now, here's the problem, as always. And you're already asking the wrong question, which is, if I can't refer to me, to whom do I refer? You're always looking for an alternative to you, which you hope is your twin brother. It never occurs to you that the true alternative to the miserable wretch of you being you, that the alternative is for you to not be you at all. To cease to exist as you. Now, don't you dare tell yourself that that is not possible, because I know it is. I know that you can cease to be you. God says so. It can be done. You can stop being wretched, yearning, foolish, stage acting you. Now, listen carefully. Your mind can't go beyond that. If your mind attempts to go beyond and say, then who is this other person that I will be? If it attempts that, it will trick you and it will give you any identity that you prefer. Instead of being a guilty sinner, I'll be a devoted spiritual follower of God. See? If that's what you want in particular. Or you could be something else. You could be anything you want to be, because imagination is quite accommodating when you call on it. Evil imagination will make you anything you want to be. So this means you have to understand thoroughly that you cannot go beyond the point that I just mentioned, the point that you have to stop right where you are, stop and understand that your mind can't go any further in understanding what I'm talking about. It can understand up to the point, intellectually, that you must let go of yourself, that you must let go of your labels, your self-descriptions. You must stop right there. And I point out the dangers of trying to go beyond it. See, people who live in imagination don't know they are, and they can be just as vicious, and they don't know that they're vicious. They'll lie about that. So look at the spot you're in now. You say, tell me what's beyond my present identity so that I'll know who I am. Tell me what I will be like if I drop my old nature, my bored nature, my foolishly excited nature. Tell me what will happen to me, for example, out in that world. How will it affect my life with my spouse? How will it affect my health, my finances? See, you have said I already, and you didn't even see it. Changing from one part of the dark jungle to another part of the dark jungle is not the same thing as leaving the jungle and being in the light. Stop asking questions as to who you will be, what will happen to you. There is no you for anything to happen to in the first place. I'll tell you what will happen if you were to stick to this, endure to the very end. Some beautifully bright day, you will understand that you were never you at all. You never were that clever person, that winner, that loser, that not so physically pretty person, or that rather attractive person physically. You're not that person who's 70. You're not that person who's 20. You're not that guilty sinner. You're not that perfected saint. You are not anything at all that you thought you were. All right. To be sure, it's a spiritual battle, but we wage it in a different way. And here's one way you can start. I'm going to go over it again. Every time you talk from yourself. Now here is the horror of it. Every time you talk from yourself, and you harden the imagination that you are real inwardly, and you are not. Person I've explained already, a person who goes too far in this self-talking and making himself the center of everything, being praised or attacked. A person who does that gets so hardened that there's no chance whatever for him to break out of the jungle into the light. You've seen their faces, haven't you? You've seen how they behave, haven't you? Now let's get back to what is called you. Can you try sometime to catch yourself talking, and right in the middle of the sentence you remember everything that you have heard tonight, and you see and understand even dimly at the start that you were always talking from that center that you both love and despise. And that love part is false love. You know what it is? It's a love for staying in the jungle of your own nature. You see, most human beings in this world will never come to the point where they love God more than themselves. It is not going to happen. This world is not going to get better. Let the world do what it wants. We're talking about us here, right here tonight, catching clues as to how we have fallen for the hoax that this body, this face, this age, this bank account, this residence, this clothing, we've fallen for the hoax that that is me. And since you've never had any other me but that, then you say, I'm not going to go any further with you until you give me this guarantee that I'll have a new nature, a new self, a happy self. You are lying. You know, you can't kid me about how your imaginary self tricks you. I am always ahead of it. And I say that so that while you're listening now, you also may get ahead of it. You want to be happy, you say. You don't want to be happy at all. What you want is a charge of worldly electricity that will enable you to call falseness truth, that will enable you to call the wrong right. You want to be able to feel something. It makes no difference what it is. Feel something so that you can employ imagination and labels and say, see, I have become a new person. Things are picking up. Things are so much better. Do you wonder then that very, very few human beings ever find and enter eternity? See, self-deception, the love of boredom, because it revolves around you, all that is involved in time thinking, and time thinking is the same, exactly the same as self-thinking. Your present horrible nature was created in time through picking it up from the world and picking it up from your own imitation of yourself. It was picked up in time, so that all you are now is a time machine which repeats the same experiences and miseries over daily. So one way, another way, you can begin to understand what you have to do is to understand that anything connected with self-reference will have the time factor in it. That is, you'll be able to see very clearly that you were an angry man 5 years ago, and lo and behold, you're an angry man today. So time is involved in anger, isn't it? Therefore, time is involved in self-reference. Why do you get mad at all? You get mad to give yourself a charge to prove that you exist as you, and since you can never do it, your own anger is going to drive you mad sooner or later unless you stop. As a matter of fact, it already has driven you mad. To be angry, to be hateful, to be hostile, even if you're covered up, is the same thing as being mad, as being insane. You are talking yourself out of the greatest gift that any human being could ever have in this life. You are talking your life away. And since you can't be talking all the time outwardly to other people, the jabbering is going on even at night, doesn't it? That's why you can't go to sleep at night. Can't you see who and what is the enemy? The enemy exists inside of you, but you've been trusting it all these years, and you lose the battles. That is, you continue to be wretched, and you never question why. You are betraying yourself. That's why. Let's, for the sake of illustration, say that general one day was out being very alert, getting kind of suspicious of that captain. And one day he saw the captain sneak off and cross over to the enemy lines and talk with the enemy generals and then come on back. See, the general, through being alert, through being spiritually suspicious, saw what was happening and began to understand why he was losing the battles. The same thing has to happen to you. You have to see how you protect the very thing that is injuring you, that old nature. Someday you'll catch it crossing the field, going over to the enemy lines, see it coming back. You'll never forget the first time that happens to you, because it will have new kind of feeling in it, new emotion, be very vivid, very alive to you. And that will be the beginning of the end of the old nature. Don't talk yourself into destruction anymore, but see that you have done this and put an end to it. Oh, the great number of things that we don't need to know, that we are firmly convinced we must know. Among them, and let's see if some of these sound familiar to you. Among the things that you think you must know are, how can I be happy? How can I get rid of my nervous strain? How can I get people to stop hurting me? How can I get rid of this vague, uncertain, haunting that goes wherever I go, that nothing can remove seemingly? Haven't you noticed for yourself the enormous number of hows, whys, who that take possession of your mind and get connected with feelings, depression for example, and that combination takes over your life so that this is what your life becomes. Your life becomes a series of strained, unanswered questions. Now, look carefully at the first greatest mistake of all. In anyone running around in this world demanding answers to their questions, the great mistake is the individual who is asking all these painful, tearful questions. That individual has nothing real about him at all. What is happening, and follow this and never forget it. What is happening when any man or woman goes out strange to say, please tell me what to do, how to be happy? The only thing that is really happening is the flow of uncontrolled energy through the individual, starting with his mind and with his feelings, swelling up into a pressure, and then expressing itself, exploding itself fiercely, cruelly, disastrously into the outer world. No one is doing anything. You have never asked a single question in your life. Impossible. But you heard your voice speaking, and you felt this agony and tension of your pain. The pain swelled up and caused you to ask a question. And you say, well, of course I'm asking questions. I want answers. It's not very nice living with me. What you have done, and it's going to take a lot of hard work for you to undo it, to really solve the mystery of what you've done against yourself. What you have done is taken the pain, the agony, and you have called that an entity that exists, which it doesn't. And then, in order to keep the illusion going further, you say, here is me, Bill, Mary, here is me agonizing. Here is me strained. And here's how the trick continues. If I have a great problem, if I have all these questions inside of me, the logical thing, you are saying illogically, the logical thing is for me to look around the outside world in books, in other people, in new circumstances, in new involvements and excitements. What the logical thing to do is for me to answer my question by seeking it out in the world. There's the question, therefore there has to be an answer. See, this is how your mind deceives you, and you'll see the depths of the deception a little later. So the first great mistake is for any human being to think that he is the worry and the tension. Thinking that that is him, he says, I must have relief. And guess what? That evil world out there will give him an answer to every question he wrongly asks. It will offer him alcohol. It will offer him money making. It'll offer him or her flattery. It will offer you 1,000 false ways of living as replies to the question. So here we are, all of us, these pathetic, deluded, ignorant human beings, wandering around, hoping for relief from the inner pain with an outer answer. And this is where one form of social evil comes in, and I'll repeat it. If you want an answer from society, from authorities, from anything out there, most assuredly you will get an answer. But the answer, because the question is false, the answer will also be false, which accounts, does it not, for human madness. Don't you sometimes feel as if you're going crazy? Not being able to solve it, not being able to lift it. You're caught in a very serious trap. And unless you see through the trap, you'll have to continue to suffer from its confinement forever. We're going to see through it tonight, and we already are, by exposing the first great problem that a human being has, which is when he feels everything so wrong inside, so hurtful and so lonely. He feels this, and because no one has ever told him better, and he's never heard the true solution, he goes out and says, surely out in that world I'm going to find solace, I'm going to find happiness. And because he never does, and you know, don't we all sense that the 10,001 time is next? And then the next set of 10,000 heartaches, and then the next, on and on. See, you want to know what hell is? Hell is living in the hope of a solution, and in your heart of hearts you know you're not going to find it where you're looking, and you can't find it. Why do you suppose then human beings continue for all their lives going out, repeating the same behavior, having the problem, having the question, and then wandering around seeking answers to it, answers that never answer anything? See, human beings really are not very intelligent. How can repeated ignorance day after day, how can there be any wisdom or intelligence in that? Hardly. What we can do is to eliminate the need for the answer by eliminating the question. There it is. If you would stop asking the question, if you would slow down, if you begin to see where the question arises from, who it arises from, you would understand what I said a few minutes ago. There is no Bill there. There's no Mary there at all. What there is, and you'll see it as clearly as the wall, what there is a pain. Yes, sure, there's a pain there. We're not denying that. There's a difficulty there. The problem. What you'll do is see that there's something wrong inside which starts to boil and starts to hurt awful bad. And then what you call you starts to look for the answer out there. But all the time, you have made the fundamental error of thinking that you have the problem, therefore you have to solve it. You think that you have the question, therefore you must find the answer. That is all false. That's called delusion. That's called living in lunacy. Anything apart from reality is living in lunacy. So we have found now that if we extinguish the question, then there's no need for an answer at all. Oh, do you know, how willing are you to not just triple, but 10 times increase your energy expenditure in order to understand this fact alone, where you are causing the problem by causing the question? If you remain silent, if you wouldn't speak, if you wouldn't get desperate, but be very still inside, the first astonishing thing you would see is that you have indeed done exactly what I explained to you. You've put a label on and you say, I suffer. Look, there is suffering, I just said that. There is this apartness from reality, which was what pain is. There is that. But it is not you at all. Won't you give up being you so you can also give up the pain? There it is, right there. Now look, you've had it. Right so far, you have been given all the facts that you have to take and start running with, working with real hard. So summary for this point. There's no point in going around trying to get answers as you have been, seeking in your own mind what little defense mechanism, what little wall should I put up today to protect myself against hurt when I meet that situation, when I think about something. You see, you have to understand that there's nothing you can do in your present condition except ask the question and invite wrong, terrifying answers. So we see we have to slow down, don't we, which we've talked about before. Slow down and see the mistake. Now here's a man, just like most human beings, story of a man who went wandering all around different countries. People do that, don't they? Why do you think they take an airplane to Switzerland? Why do you think they take a boat to China, slow boat? Why do they do that? They're wandering. They're looking for answers, aren't they? And you know very well. They get on the airplane in Los Angeles, at Los Angeles Airport, and we land in Switzerland. The very same person gets off the airplane. And they don't have intelligence enough to see that. Once you've seen the Alps, what else? So this man flew around and boated around and wandered around all these countries, and he got tens of thousands of answers, including the answers of the owner of the souvenir shop. Buy this toy elephant and it will help you to sleep at night. all the answers the world has to give, he got. All you have to do is walk up with a pathetic face or a little money, especially money, and you'll get answers from people who are going to exploit you. So for years and years he wandered around, till finally one time he came to a kingdom, a small little kingdom up on a big mountain, hidden in the mountain. Not very many people went there, but he happened to find it. And because it was his habit to go ask questions wherever he got off the airplane or off the boat, he wandered down the street of this hidden kingdom and asked questions of everyone who came down the street, asked questions of the shopkeepers. He asked him, how can I be happy? He asked him, how can I get rid of the pain? He said, how come people persecute me so much? How come the haunting never goes away? How come my mind seems to be my worst enemy instead of my friend? He went around that hidden kingdom and asked dozens of questions there as he did in Switzerland and China. But here's something different happened. What happened was that all the people in that kingdom very politely acknowledged his question, but they didn't answer it. They were polite. Sir, I see you asked me a question. Very courteous. And he went to the second person, the third person, and they all did the very same thing. Every time he asked them, how can I be happy? They didn't answer him. And do you know what that did to him for the first few times? Typically, it made him mad. And let me interrupt myself by saying, isn't it characteristic of human beings to make demands? I ask you a question, I demand an answer from you. So the first thing he did was to get angry when they didn't respond the way that other people did. Nope, it doesn't make a difference that all the tens of thousands of other people lied to him with their answers. It didn't make any difference because he wasn't aware of it. He didn't know a lie from the truth at all. So he got mad, disturbed, and he'd go back to his hotel room and brood for a while. What a different place this is. I ask them questions, tell them I need help, and they don't answer me. So he said, I'll try again. So he went out, tried another 10, 30 people. Same thing, they politely nodded at him, but they didn't answer his question. After a while, when he got back to his motel room, after a couple of weeks, he began to think a little bit different toward what had happened to him. He began to see that his hostility toward those people out there that he'd had so strongly before, his hostility began to fade away and was beginning to be replaced by something that he didn't understand, but which was very real to him. He could sense the reality of it. And he actually saw, and listen to this, for the first time in his life, he was beginning to enjoy being by himself there in the motel room, enjoy being alone and enjoying his thinking. That's a miracle in itself. He could enjoy his own mind for the first time before it had been a torment. He went out in the street and it went on and on and on. Nobody answered his question till one night in his hotel room, it finally came to him like a lightning bolt. Exactly what we are getting at here. He saw, now wait a minute, he said, if I don't ask a question about my problem, if I don't hound other people and tell them to give me answers, if I don't ask the question, is an answer necessary? No. See what we've discovered. This self-centered, neurotic little self is nothing but a question creator. Demanding, hostile, fierce, under the delusion that an answer from the world can relieve the pain, which it never does. That man discovered something up in that hidden kingdom. What he discovered was that those people who refused to answer his question, they gave him an answer out of this world. And he didn't see it at the start, but now he's beginning to understand what was going on way up there. And so he experimented. Walking down the street, he saw 4 or 5 people coming. Ordinarily, he would ask questions of them. He walked right by. It wasn't easy. He could see the temptation to go over and ask them a question. How can I be happy? He walked right by them, and he found, and more backing up with what he had seen before, that the whole and soul problem, pain, that he had in his life was thinking that he needed answers to his question. And he saw that by refusing to answer questions, refusing to ask questions, he canceled out the need for answers. Therefore, the whole thing, the opposites of a question and answer, collapsed right in front of them. And do you know what he found out? He found out that he could have been a happy human being 30 years ago, had he been as intelligent then as he was now. So what we're doing, to repeat here, is to refuse to go along with ourselves, with that deceiver inside that promises over and over for all these years that if you find an answer out there, that's all you have to do is keep searching long enough and you'll find just the right answer. And you never will. And you know that yourself. You suspect it. How about then not asking the question in the first place? How about never again asking a painful question, and how can I have peace of mind? Then you'll go and do something, and you will be doing something, and you will be caught right in the middle of it, and you'll never find peace of mind. And you are the person who has made it impossible to find true peace. Comes down, doesn't it, to the sense of identity that we have to see through. The seeing through it is the surrender of it. You don't have to really surrender in the sense that you're taking your will, so-called will, from your mind. You just have to see through it, and the whole thing collapses. Now, this room here, this class, these teachings, the truth that is here, this is what we're doing. We're getting ourselves to the point where we're beginning to suspect that the false self is nothing but a deceiver who will invent any kind of an inquiry to catch us in the trap of seeking an answer again. What else? Can you see through it already? Are you beginning to see through the logic of the truth itself? Now look, you come into this hall. New people come into this hall. And I wonder if you've ever noticed what happens when you do so. I'll explain to you what happens because you're not aware of it too much. It'll grow in understanding as you grow yourself spiritually. When anyone comes into this room, yourself or anyone else, a very interesting thing happens absolutely, and I know it and you faintly sense it. What happens is that the question asker is suspended. That part of a human being who comes in with all his questions and all his self-made answers, there's something in the atmosphere of this room that puts a suspension into the air, and therefore into everyone who comes in here. They don't understand it, but I'll tell you what it does do to them. It does it to you. As long as you've been coming here, it does the same thing to you, which is to put a certain amount of discomfort in you. You're like the man who's walking down the street in that hidden kingdom up in the mountain, and you're walking down and you ask your questions of people and you expect an answer. You know, people are so glib, you ask them anything, they have a dozen answers to one question. You're walking down the street, you come in here, and you ask your questions, and there is spiritual silence. Why do you think an awful lot of people get angry, get upset, who come into here, and come and often don't come back? Because that is happening to them, and they're unaware of it. So they come in, and if you can begin to use the discomfort, connect it with what we're talking about, you can begin to see that this mechanical machine inside of you, which is not a person at all, it's not Bill or Mary, this mechanical machine is so used to outflowing and continuing in the way it always continues that it still wants to continue inside of you to behave the way it always behaves and to destroy as it always destroys. So you become very conscious, a little more each time. When you come in here, you're not going to get any answers. what you're going to get is the destruction of the question, which would be the destruction of the illusion that there's a person there, that the destruction of the illusion there's a person there who needs to ask any questions at all. Now look, see if you can take a leap and understand this. A human spirit, a spirit who is living with reality, a spirit inside of any of you who's living with reality, has no occasion to ask questions and get answers. Truth, God, is absolutely complete as is. Where's the need for nervousness? Can reality be nervous about anything at all? Only Bill and Mary can be nervous, because they don't understand that if they were to see through the horrible hoax that we've been discussing, if they could see through that hoax and drop themselves, you tell me where the problem would be. If you have difficulties in your life, which you do, if you have difficulties, it's because a part of you is refusing stoutly, refusing fiercely to understand what you have been told about right here tonight. See, the warning signal goes out when you come into this room, and it goes out from the wrong parts of you that says, the wrong part that feels threatened, that says, there's a lot of things going on in here that makes me nervous, and you ally with that feeling and call it your own. And so many people come here and listen for a half hour and don't hear a thing, therefore nothing changes. You want to change? Your responsibility is to be willing to understand what you just heard. Your spirit, the spirit of truth that perhaps has hindered you in a small way, that is willing. Why don't you side with that? Now look, when you go out of here, you notice the nervousness you have in the face of the whole world, the uncertainty, the annoyances you have. And I want you to know that all these unnecessary pains is the question machine. On and on and on. You ask questions, and half the time you give yourself the answer. The wrong part asking the question, and the wrong part answering the question. And nothing has changed. When you come in here from now on, try to be more conscious of the fact that you're in this hidden kingdom we're talking about. It is in this room truth exists. It is right here when you are. Now, what are you doing to rebel and get angry because the questions you ask are not answered? Of course they're not, and they won't be. You're never betrayed here. That's why there's silence instead of an answer to the question. The world wants their answers from the world. Let them have it. That's what they want. Do you want it anymore, or do you want the answer that comes with a capital A when you cease to ask all questions? Truth is not troubled. It asks nothing. Truth is free. And when you're free, that's all there is to it. No agitation, just a knowing. Equality comes to birdland. That's the title of a story you are about to hear. Once upon a time, there was a land called Birdland. And being birdland, there were hundreds of varieties of birds in this country. And they were under a very natural leadership. The leaders, directors, governors of birdland were the birds who by nature could fly farther and fly higher than the average bird could. So this meant that the eagles, the swans, the seagulls, the flamingos, some of the larger, stronger, and even more intelligent birds were in natural charge of the country of birdland. And the reason they were in charge was simply because they were superior in intelligence and in strength. For example, the eagles could fly high and range all over the country. And because of their sharp eyesight, they could locate places for nesting for the rest of the birds, for the sparrows and the robins. They could sight sources of food and water, the woods where there were berries, and for the rest of the birds. And these birds who were natural leaders brought back all this information to the rest of the birds, who gratefully received it and went out and found food and water and nesting places, shade and on hot days, and so on. So the country of birdland was very happy. Everyone had plenty of food. Everything was nice. This went on for a long while. Everything was peaceful in birdland. But there also lived in birdland a certain group of birds who were called cuckoos. Now, these cuckoos really, factually and actually, were inferior. They were inferior in intelligence, in strength, in normal initiative to go out and earn your own living. In other words, the cuckoos were lazy bums. Now, being inferior in intelligence and in character, the cuckoos were also negative and sour and jealous and envious. You see, one negativity always includes another. So they were jealous cuckoo birds. And they would watch the natural leadership of the eagles and swans in action. And they'd see these powerful, intelligent birds go out and get all this information and bring it back and give it to others. And remember now, the eagles and swans and flamingos and seagulls, they got nothing out of it. It was just natural for them to lead. They didn't have any sense of power. They didn't want any. They were mentally healthy birds, which was one of the reasons they were natural leaders. But the cuckoos, seeing the eagles and swans, became envious and jealous of their power and their position. And they saw how the other birds naturally, the robins and sparrows and meadowlarks, how they naturally admired, a natural admiration and gratitude to the eagles and swans. And the cuckoos were jealous. And so they gathered together, a number of these cuckoos, and the numbers got larger and larger the more they gathered together. And they began to talk among themselves hatefully, viciously, and they finally decided what they wanted. And what they said was, "We demand equality. We want equality with the eagles and the swans." See, in their hearts, feeling inferior, feeling like nothing. They wanted to be admired. They didn't know who they were. They didn't understand themselves, or they didn't understand the natural laws of life at all. So they began to get together and put pressure on the other birds to make them equal. We demand to be equal with everyone else. There should be no superior people and no inferior people. Everyone should be just alike. And the word began to spread throughout birdland that all these cuckoos demanded equality. And after a while, another group of birds in birdland heard about these demands for being equal. And this group of birds was called the beady-eyed buzzards. The beady-eyed buzzards were large but stupid, awkward, no intelligence, no decency. They were simply had buzzard-like minds. And one day the buzzards got together, and they talked among themselves just as the cuckoos had. And the buzzards said among themselves, "You hear what those cuckoos are doing? They're demanding equality." And their little beady-eyed minds said, "I wonder what there is in this for us." And then it hit them what there was in it for them. So representatives of the beady-eyed buzzards and the cuckoos got together in conference. And the buzzards led the way. The buzzard says, "Look, we have heard that you want equality. And let me tell you, cuckoos, that we buzzards are on your side. Why should those eagles and swans have superiority? Why should they be able to fly so far and so fast and so high? We believe in your demands for equality. You have a right to it. You have been oppressed long enough. We, the buzzards, will help you so that this is all one great, glorious, great society of birds." Oh, the cuckoos went cuckoo over that idea. Now they had an ally. The cuckoo said, "Listen, this is great. We're both righteous people, only demanding what's coming to us. How nice. Let's do indeed join forces and work together." But the cuckoo said to the buzzards, "Now, could you give us the plans, the precise plans by which we're going to carry this out in a practical way? How are we all going to become equal? We don't understand." Now the buzzards, being very crafty, they had the answer ready. They said, "Simple. See, we are your friend. We thought this out for you. And here's what we're going to do. As soon as we can arrange it, we're going to have an election. You see, there's been no government in birdland up to now. And look, you have to people ahead of things. We're going to establish a government before those eagles and swans, in their arrogance, had their way. From now, the nice people, the good people, us people, are going to be in charge. So we're going to have an election." And the cuckoos picked up their cuckoo ears, and they said, "Fine." And the buzzards explained in detail. We the buzzards, are going to run for public office, head of the government, with lots of bureaus, of course, underneath the head executives. Now, you cuckoos, there are quite a lot of you. All of you cuckoos get together, and you vote us into office. Once we get into office, never mind the equality, we will take care of that. But the thing you have to do now, this is kind of a deal, it's a bargain, You're going to all have to get out, band together, everyone go down to the polls, put pressure on people. Now, remember remember, we're both in a very righteous cause for the sake of birdland humanity. So, any lies you tell are justified. Don't hold back. You will be in the highest of morality to lie, to cheat, to steal, to do anything. Remember, all this evil is for good." And the cuckoos, being cuckoo, said, "Oh, that's right. That's right." That's right. Because they were natural liars themselves, and so they accepted it because they wanted to accept it. Election day came. Because of the pressure and the deceit of both the buzzards and the cuckoos, the buzzards were swept into office. They were now the heads of the government of birdland, the first government birdland had ever had. And there was the victory celebrations and the drinking and the screaming. Now we will all march shoulder to shoulder together for the great society that will now be the outcome of our victory here at the polls. So for a few weeks after the victory of the buzzards, nobody noticed anything different in the ordinary daily life of birdland. Food was still abundant. So the buzzard said, "We're now in power, cuckoos. We're going to pass a law which will make everyone equal." Listen to this. "Effective as of the day that we pass this law, everyone will be equal in birdland." Guess what the law is? And pretty soon no one had to guess what the law was because it went in all the birdland newspapers. Here's what the law consisted of, which was passed by the assembly of the buzzards, backed up by the cuckoos. Listen carefully. "Effective as of the first of the month, all eagles, all swans, all flamingos, all large and powerful and intelligent birds would have to put a lead weight on their wings to slow them down." Now, they found out by a very expensive survey that the average cuckoo could only fly a mile before getting exhausted and stopping to complain about the scarcity of food. So they put weights on the wings of every eagle, swan, and the other large bird so that nobody in birdland, nobody could fly further than 1 mile. No bird could fly any higher than a cuckoo. At last, equality had come to birdland. Now you may ask, why didn't the eagles and the swans revolt? Why didn't they say, "We're not going to put those lead weights on"? Well, there's something about birdland that you have to understand. That it is not under the control of the more intelligent birds, the eagles. It's under the control of the cuckoos. And the cuckoos, in order to stay in control, threaten, hate. Then any eagle who didn't put a weight on his wings so that he was held down to equality, he'd go to jail. And they knew it. And they understood it. It didn't make them feel bad. They just understood. So everyone was equal in birdland. 6 months later, all the birds, every one of them, the sparrows and the meadowlarks, even the cuckoos, they all looked around and they said, "What happened to that abundance of food we had 6 months ago? What happened to that watering place that we had before?" And you know that 6 months ago we could go to a forest and there's trees where we could put nests in, and even if now there's even one place to put a nest in, millions of birds are fighting over it, and look at the price on that nest. Nobody can afford one anymore. What was once very happy birdland with natural, intelligent, spiritual leadership, what was once happy birdland was gone, was all over. And in its place, the buzzards and the cuckoos were in charge. And every time the complaint came up from now on about the shortage of things, you know what they did? They passed a law. And then when there was another complaint, they passed another law. Another complaint, they passed another law. And no one ever saw that over the years that they passed these hundreds and thousands of laws, that they were exactly contradictory to one another. And of course, by this time, the bird bureaucracy had spread so that everyone was paying 60% of their income in taxes to support equality for all. Now, there is no happy ending to this story at all, because, you see, there's no happy ending to this same story in society. I told you that those swans and eagles remained very happy, very peaceful in spite of it all, because they themselves knew how to live in this bird world dominated by cuckoos and by buzzards. They were at peace within themselves in spite of the chaos outwardly. But all the other birds, the cuckoos and the buzzards themselves, and the sparrows and the meadowlarks, who never thought very much about what was happening, they were all very miserable. Now, may I see the hands of those of you who know exactly what I'm talking about? How many do not understand what I'm talking about? Okay, you will in time. If you have questions about the story or about anything else, we'll have questions up until about the break time. So if you'll raise your hand and do speak out loud and clear, we'll go into that. All right? Please.
Would you comment on being comfortable?
On being comfortable, a cuckoo or a buzzard or even a meadowlark or a robin can never be comfortable. What you call your comfort, and you should know this, is simply the routine, familiar life, which means that you don't have to do anything that would jolt your mind a little bit. And you won't even have to notice what's going through your mind. You can live an unnoticed life. This is false comfort, right? This means that you are a very sensitive human being. This means that you walk around defensive, even wondering such little things as whether someone approves of the way you dress or the way you talk. So you're always defensive and uncomfortable when you are comfortable because you've hidden out from the realities of life. To be truly comfortable means that you don't have a self which you are trying to keep comfortable by lying about its existence. You're really comfortable when there is nothing there that you have to think about. Now, if you think about yourself, you're thinking about a fantasy self. And this is why you're nervous. To be comfortable means to be free of the fantasies that you exist according to your fantasies. You don't.
You say resist temptation. Why?
Resist temptation? Resisting temptation doesn't mean exactly what it says. What it means is to see temptation. When you see, look, suppose you're tempted by something. Okay, it comes your way, and the old lazy cuckoo buzzard nature just falls for it. The easiest thing to do with temptation is go along with it, right? All right. I hope then that you are at the spiritual level where you sense that just falling for a temptation to get mad or something, just falling for it is the easy, cuckoo, lazy way out. Doing this thing you've always done. To resist temptation, therefore, means that you are going to see that you're just about to make that sarcastic, snappy remark back to someone, even in your own mind if you don't say it out there. You're just about to make that remark, and you catch yourself and resist temptation. The only resistance to temptation is consciousness, light, the noticing of the arousal of that negative feeling by which you're going to strike back. So resisting temptation does not mean to fight. It means to see, to notice. The lady.
Would you comment on how emotion must produce confusion?
Emotion must produce confusion. Emotion is always backed up by thoughts. And since you know that all thoughts, except practical thoughts, of course, involve a self, a fantasy I, those thoughts always must join themselves with emotion, because emotion gives a backup to the I. Confusion must result then by the fusion of I and emotions, because they will be contradictory to each other, because your eyes that started it will be contradictory. This is why it is so essential for you to begin to see, first of all, the connection between the thought I, the self-glorified self, between that and how you feel, even happy feeling, what you call happy feelings, elated feelings. When you can see how they become allies, you can then stop the alliance, refuse to let them come together, and the farther apart they grow, so that they are not in false, evil alliance with each other, the farther apart they grow, the more your insight will grow, so that you understand, and therefore the less alliance between two wrongly operating energies inside of it. You have mental energy, you have emotional. When you put them together, this causes an explosion of a third and more fierce wrong state, doesn't it? So as you separate them, it becomes clearer that you must simply look. You must simply sit up straight in your chair, or stand up where you are, and think clearly. Now, when you think clearly, that has no invitation in it at all to wrong, riotous emotion. The invitation comes because a thought self, a false personality that you have, always being insecure, always needing support, it will call on emotion and say, back me up. And it will. Example, you're in a discussion with someone and it's not going your way, you're not winning, and the other person scores ego points over you. And now you're getting to doubt yourself. You thought you were right about this thing you were talking about. I'm right. But he starts to get through to you. And the I begins to shake. The I says, hey, listen, I need help. You better call on the false self residing in emotion, come and back me up, which it does. And you know what you do then? You do any number of wrong things. You get mad, furious, you get rageful, you start to lie, you start to think of little ways you can get revenge. Maybe you know something about that person. You learned it long ago and it's been back in your mind. I'll call up some emotion in me that will cause some emotion in him by me bringing up the past. I know the secret, how that vicious thing you did 20 years ago. Yeah, but what did you do back in 1960? You're going to feel, the false self is going to feel strong, isn't it? It's going to feel in power. And this is called self-destruction.